So Gareth Southgate has resigned as England manager following the 2-1 defeat to Spain in the Euros final. Francis, Southgate is more than just a sporting figure. He's very much a cultural and political figure. That's why we want to talk about him on this podcast. He's got a bit of a reputation for actually diving in with both feet into the culture war.
Good. I like the little turn of phrase. Good.
Footballing turn of phrase.
Yeah.
Denouncing Brexit, implying very heavily that England fans are all racist. What have you made of his career on that side of things, particularly off the pitch?
Off the pitch, one thing I've actually been impressed by with Southgate is that he is under a tremendous amount of pressure and vitriol. And I don't think if people who will listen to this around the world and people who aren't football fans realise just if England aren't doing well, we look at the England manager as if he's worse than a paedophile. We just look at him and you're going, this is terrible, and you're doing this deliberately. We lose all sense of perspective when it comes to when it comes to this person. One thing that I will have to say about Southgate is I found him actually on the whole to be a unifying figure. I found, when he took over, we lost to Iceland.
Yeah.
In the 2016 Euros. It was humiliating and embarrassing. And we've actually got to a point where we're much better. We're doing really well. And he actually said something that I found really interesting when they asked him about politics in this Euros, because Kylian Mbappe, what a player Kylian Mbappe is, came out and denounced Marine Le Pen. And he said, and actually, to be fair to Mbappe, there's very good reasons for him to denounce Le Pen. But he denounced Le Pen. And they asked about Southgate. He actually said, what we have in the camp is a politics-free zone.
Yeah.
So I think he learned from his mistakes. He learned from his missteps. And I think at the end, he was politically neutral, which, if I'm honest, is what I want from sport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think this Euros has felt less politicised generally, and I think Southgate has reined it in somewhat. But ahead of that, Tom, should we talk a bit about it just seemed that he was constantly antagonising the fans, not just for the boring play that gets people's backs up, but because of his pronouncements on cultural war issues.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons it's easy to, because there has been this shift away from these supercharged cultural war issues, that it's easy to forget just how willing a sort of protagonist in the cultural war he was originally.
Yeah.
And there's even things I'd forgotten about. So in the run-up to the 2018 World Cup, he was giving interviews, one of which in which he said that he was pontificating about Brexit. So, it's a pining for a world that no longer exists. And then in another interview with ITV for a documentary, he openly said that the Brexit vote had racial undertones. You think, this is the England manager, why are you coming out making these comments on this incredibly controversial issue? And then, of course, we saw in the wake of BLM, the knee taking, then when the fans go back into the stadiums because of COVID restrictions easing and you get the boos, he really doubles down at that moment.
Yeah.
He basically says, if you think we're going to stop doing this now, then, then you've got another thing coming. The Dear England letter, which was obviously very well received by the great and good. But really the subliminal message of it is like, look, I know you don't like our lovely anti-racist politics, but you are wrong.
Yeah,
to show you, it was
you're on the losing side. It was how he addressed,
and it was obviously presented as people sending racist messages, something that, and all the But I think the problem is that there was this attempt to present any bristling against the knee taking and the virtue signalling as the equivalent of sending someone a horrendous racist message. And also, the last Euros, the whole moral panic about racist England fans that happened afterwards. This was something that he was also very much involved in. I mean, at the end of the day, obviously, it was horrendous after that final when Rashford and Sancho and Saka got sent those horrendous racist messages. But it quickly got turned into not, that's awful, let's find who's responsible for it. But there's something rotten at the heart of English football fandom. It was completely breezed over the fact that the vast majority of it came from overseas, which no one talks about now. I think there were less than a dozen arrests in the UK itself.
Yeah.
And also, there was the whole Rashford mural moment where, of course, there's this mural of Marcus Rashford in Manchester. It gets defaced. This quickly goes around the internet and is just heavily presented or implied as this is obviously some sort of racist thing. Even though the police almost immediately say that they don't believe there's any racial motivation. And when the unblurred images of what the graffiti said, which was basically just a cock and balls and said "shite in a bucket,"
Shite in a bucket, yeah.
And it was also in Manchester City light blue. Maybe suggests that the tribalism on display was actually more sporting than it was racial. So it was his willingness to kind of engage in all of that. But I think he did learn, but unfortunately from recognising the error of his ways, but I think it was because of the fact that particularly at Qatar, when at the point where they were, are you really going to engage in your virtue signalling if it means that you can't play? Because the Qataris aren't be very happy about that. The fact that they just flopped instantly, I think, made all of them realise it was probably not worth it to carry on going down.
Yeah, I did want to talk a bit about that World Cup. Because that was, I think, that was where we had the sort of bonfire of the virtue signals. Because suddenly, the One Love armbands. If they, England were told, if you wear the pro LGBT armband, you'll get yellow carded. And they say, we won't wear it then.
That's what Martin Luther King would have done.
Yeah. And, there was this, even Southgate himself, actually, when he was asked about the condition of migrant workers there, he said, well, they would have loved to have been there. They love it. They're excited about the football when they're talking about people who died. So it's like that sort of, it's easy to posture against English football fans, very difficult to posture against a very powerful petro state.
Yeah, absolutely. Who's paying a hell of a lot of money and lining everybody's pockets in order to go over there. I think what people realise pretty quickly is that politics is complicated. Yeah. And actually the Michael Jordan approach, when asked if he was going to criticise conservatives in the 1990s, and he went, no, because conservatives buy sneakers too. Yeah. And you can go, well, that's quite a cynical approach. But actually it's a very intelligent approach, because unless you are a political figure, unless you want to become a political figure, unless you have the knowledge to do that, then what you're doing is exposing yourself to a whole raft of criticism that actually, if you're sensible, you can avoid. A classic example of this is Jordan Henderson. So Jordan Henderson, England footballer, great player, won the Champions League, Liverpool captain, great servant for England and Liverpool. At the end of his career, it was pretty much made clear to him by the manager he was no longer a first teamer. We're going to bring in newer, younger, fresher players. You're not going to be a regular. And he said to the manager, Klopp, that's fair enough. And I want to look elsewhere. Klopp went, okay, fine. Yeah. And he moved to go and play in the Saudi Arabian League. However, he'd come out as being very strongly LGBT, all the rest of it. And people were like, well, hang on a minute, mate. Yeah. So you're a staunch believer in gay rights. Fair enough. Yeah. Great. And then because someone's offered you a lot of money, you're going to abandon those principles and head over to Saudi Arabia. Which one is it? Yeah. And what he ended up doing was making himself look like a complete dickhead. When actually, if he'd just shut his mouth, he would have shed loads of cash, and no one would have cared.
Yeah, because no one has asked footballers to be political figures or to be role models. We don't. Most football fans don't expect or want that from football players. Great if they have a passion about something, no one wants to stop them from airing that. But
and I think everyone knows it's so phony as well. The Jordan Henderson thing was the perfect example of that. At the very least, they might genuinely think that they're being incredibly important and progressive and using the platform that they have and to all the usual cliches. But I remember when he gave that interview to The Athletic, when he was kind of sort of his mea culpa, but explanations of what happened. He was like, I really believe in this. I put in the hard yards. I wore the rainbow laces. You just think, is that really what it means to be?
And
by
the way, somebody laced those boots for him.
So that was good. But I think at the very least, it's been pushed back to a certain extent. But I think it's this weird relationship which has grown up though between the fans and the team is kind of interesting, because obviously Southgate gets a lot of plaudits for making it fun to play for England again. And creating a sense of togetherness and getting the country behind the team, even in the face of some quite terrible, turgid football. But at the same time, the way in which he's done it, by also appealing to these kind of cultural things, playing into these prejudices against football fans, it also created this level of hostility. Yeah. I mean, I thought it was really fascinating when you had, during the tournament, when England almost went out to Slovakia, and then Jude Bellingham was saying, obviously we're only a minute away from being kicked out of the tournament, and you think, you're going to go home to all that rubbish, which means people criticising them for going out when they should have definitely progressed. And you think, okay, now almost any criticism of you is wrong-headed and probably driven by something that it shouldn't be. So, yes, it's, on the one hand, he kind of brought them together, but on the other hand, he also created this sort of distance between the team and the public, because they it got to the position where they would be demonised for criticising them for doing anything, whether it's virtue signalling or just playing terribly, which is a strange place to end up in.
Here's an interesting question I'll put to you both, see if you know the answer. You know who was instrumental, which footballer was instrumental in bringing the rainbow laces to the game, and actually and appeared, I think, in the promotional material for it?
I don't know.
Joey Barton.
The great progressive thinker of our time.
Yeah, I put my finger in his face when you're the problem, Joey. Have a think, mate.
Incredible.